Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Jay Encarnacion, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are thrilled to have Anthony Calleo, the founder and chief employment experience officer of Calleo X. Anthony brings over 20 years of expertise in human resources with experience at iconic companies like Disney, where he honed his craft in creating exceptional workplace cultures. Based in New York, Calleo X, founded to transform employee experiences, is helping businesses build thriving workplaces through tailored HR solutions and innovative programs like Reset It Inc. We'll be exploring his founding story, how his business empowers clients to boost retention and engagement, and his vision for scaling this impact-driven venture. So with that being said, let's dive right in. Anthony, welcome to Founders Future.
Yeah, super excited to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. An honor to have you on the show, Anthony. And would really love to start at the top, if you can, for our listeners here. Take us back to the beginning. What specific problem in the employee experience landscape really inspired you to start Calleo X?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I started my corporate career as a learning and development specialist, and then really very early on in my career realized that as great impactful training as a lot of my L&D community can create, what's happening outside in the workplace, right, is really what's affecting and shaping the employees. So I always felt like I wanted to do more beyond just learning and development and take a look at the entire employee experience. But to attack your question more directly, it's really about helping companies or teaching companies how to create exceptional workplaces where people want to show up their authentic selves every day. So it's a champion for not only having leaders show up the way they need to show up to lead their people, but also having individual contributors show up and being able to lead whatever it is that they're working on and show up the best version of themselves. And so that's what really motivates me is to create that type of work environment. And I've worked that craft, as you laid out my bio, I've worked that craft inside corporate, but now I really want to come out and help. Particularly my focus is startups that are about to go through some accelerated people growth and small to medium-sized businesses that again are growing or maybe feeling a little bit stuck and not showing how to get to that next level from a people standpoint. Those are the companies that I find are really open to rethinking how they lead and then how their individual contributors show up. So that's what really motivated me to create Calleo EX and go out and share my craft with the rest of the working world.
I love it. I love it. So with that, obviously gave us a good bit there, knowing that you're working with primarily startups and small, medium businesses that really are in that growth phase, but not really sure how to properly have that growth phase with the amount of employees and people that they're going to have with them. You're coming in and really helping them create that. Walk us through the nuts and bolts of that for our listeners, Anthony, who might be going through that experience right now. And after this airs, are going to come and work with you to get that help that they need. How are you really generating revenue today with Calleo EX? What's that core offer there? How is it structured for your clients when they come and work with you?
Yeah, ultimately, and this is going to vary depending on size, right? Because what a scaling startup needs is going to be different than what a business needs, right? So scale ups tend to need coaching and advisement, right? And then have some sort of a semblance as they're scaling their people, what type of people are they going to start bringing into the organization? When startups are at that inflection point, what I call bringing strangers into the company, right? So it's no longer you and the co-founders and maybe a couple of people that you got really tight with and know. Now you're going to start going out to the talent pools and you're going to start bringing in essentially strangers, right? How do you make sure they're still at alignment, that word that gets thrown around a lot, cultural fit, right? But then what is that cultural fit? What does that look like? For me, it's the entire employee journey. So from the point we onboard them, and again, that's going to look a little bit different at a startup as opposed to a small to medium-sized business. But from the time we acquire them, what's our employer brand proposition look like all the way through to onboarding, while they're with the organization and ultimately when they leave. So it's really that entire employee experience. It's not unlike any business that's really connected well with their customers and have done customer journey maps to understand what are all the touch points that customers have with that brand, product, and service. It's a similar process, only we're looking internally And at the core of it, as a company scales, it's all about missions, visions, value, and purpose, the organizational North Star. So the first thing to answer your question directly is, are those values that you have, is your mission, your purpose aligned with your company strategy? And then if it is, how are you operationalizing that? Because if not, it's just words on a poster in a conference room or words on your website for your customers, and it's more marketing than it is your organizational North Star. And we know that exceptional employee experiences equal exceptional customer experiences. And that's internal and external, right? We've got our internal customers, we've got our external customers. And so it's taking that holistic look at what's the culture like, what should it be, and then more importantly, as you scale, how do you maintain that so you don't lose that secret sauce that made you successful?
Absolutely. And that's a huge piece there is at the end. And what you mentioned there is the scale. So, what has your experience been so far, Anthony, with scaling this type of model with what you're offering for your clients here?
Listen, my experience is really this simple. If you know what your purpose is, if you know what your vision is, right? Which ultimately, if you really think about it, what makes, a great business owner or a great solopreneur, right? Really understanding what they're doing and why they're doing it and being able to articulate it in a fairly simple way, right? So it's understanding what that purpose is and how it connects to the people that you're trying to deliver to, whoever your customers are. If you have a clear purpose, and then we can understand how employees understand how they're serving that purpose and where they fit in. That's the ultimate secret to success. It's one of those things where it's simply said, but it might be a little bit more complicated to implement and stay true to, particularly if you're focused on scaling a business. You're really generally focused on putting your capital and effort somewhere else. But if you don't find that careful balance of investing in the people and what we call the human capital side of the business, you're going to find as you scale, you're going to start creating frictions inside the organization. And that's either going to hold back growth or it's certainly it's going to hold back growth and you're not going to realize your full potential.
Incredible. So with that overall, you're really providing that array of services across that coaching and advisory, the tailored HR strategies. You have that Reset It program. You have also fractional HR services that you can provide as well. So I mean, would you say any one of those services like the main bread and butter for what you're doing at Calleo EX, whether it's 70 to 80% of the business and the rest is there, or is it even across the board there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for me, the most impactful work is defining that culture, right? And the employer brand. And then all the other pieces fall into it, right? How we lead fractionally from an HR standpoint and what should that HR organization look like for you? Those pieces start to fall into place, right? Just like your business does. And what I will typically do is to make sure that companies are left with what's the right type of HR organization that you need and who should that HR leader be, whether it's a chief people officer, director of people, whatever, at whatever level makes sense to bring that individual in, just making sure you have that right person, that right fit. Because my jam is really not helping people, but teaching people how to do this. It's not feeding them the fish, it's teaching them how to fish. So I can leave them better and know that it's going to get handed off to a HR team that's going to scale along with the business. And then maybe I fall into an advisory role if necessary. But it's really, so yeah, it's all of those things, but really at the core, it's what's the company trying to accomplish and what are the right people to bring in to help them accomplish that? And what are the values that we need to operationalize to make sure that continues to happen?
So with that, they're doing so much across the board on that front there, Anthony. What's working best for you guys today as far as the acquisition side? How are you getting that consistent quality lead flow coming into Calleo EX, whether it's ads that you're running or social media or referrals from past successes? Walk us through what channels are working best for you right now.
Yeah, I love that. For me, the key thing is being very intentional about how I put myself out there in a very authentic way. And I know that's a bit of a bingo card or word salad, but honestly, it's one of the things that I was tempted to do is to take a look at what everyone else was doing and maybe copy it and modify it a little bit rather than put it out my authentic self. What you'll find if you follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn, it's a lot of thought leadership, right? And maybe some brand building, but really just thought leadership and playing it forward out into the community. Most of my acquisition is through conversations and networking. After 30 odd years in corporate, I've got a pretty decent network. And once you start putting yourself out there, you'll have people realize, hey, well, I didn't know you were doing that. I can use your services. I worked with you. Those are the biggest testimonials. And I think because you've been in this space for a while, once you get that first one, two clients and do well by them, the ball really starts rolling. It's acquiring those first couple of projects that are seemingly the most daunting. But if you go out there with the right intention, I'm a big believer, and this is the tenet of the reset coaching that we do. It's basically you'll receive what you need to receive when you need to receive it. So if you're working in your present self, your intentional self, and you're gonna receive what you put out. And I found that to be 100% true, and truly, including being connected with you and having this conversation today.
Absolutely. I love that. So with that being said, especially for our listeners who are using a similar model to what you're doing, what do you do when you're approaching the pipeline and referrals slowing down a bit on that side? How are you approaching that idea of predictability? Are you thinking about maybe doing ads, or what's your approach to that to continue the scale of what you're trying to do here?
Yeah, it's great. Listen, I think ultimately, as revenue scales, you start thinking about putting some of your capital
Right.
in advertising or hiring somebody who can help you with lead generation, right? But for now, it's still building that organic growth through networking and thought leadership, right? And you got to be a relentless networker. And I think this is probably true for a lot of people who they find the idea of sales daunting, right? I certainly did and never wanted to think of myself as a salesperson, right? But you don't need to be. You just need to be a conversationalist and you have a conversation with somebody. And in the course of that conversation, if you hear that they're having problems or challenges or there are opportunities that you could potentially help them with, you present them with that, right? And then you just let it grow. You just let it grow organically. And some people might call that consultative sales. There are just different ways of saying it. But again, if you go out there with the intention of, hey, I'm not having a conversation because I want to sell you something. I'm having a conversation because I want to learn about you. I want to learn about your business. And oh, by the way, if there are ways that I think I can help you or relieve some pain points, let's have that conversation if you're open to it.
Absolutely. I love that. Talk to us a bit about, with that being said, there about the sales process, Anthony. Are you running the show on your own here as a solopreneur, or do you have a sales team, marketing team, assistants behind you to get the process going? What does that look like from?
You're talking to the team right now. I did early on bring somebody in to help me with the marketing and marketing strategy and helping me crystallize the ideas around sales funnel and top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, and all the basic stuff that I need to be thinking about. I really do think that having fresh perspectives is very important. I've found the solopreneur consulting fractional space to be very supportive.
Yeah.
So the community will not only help you with tactical stuff, hey, what do your contracts look like? And what does a retainer agreement look like, all the way through to exactly what you're asking, right? What do you do for sales? What do you do for lead generation? But it's just like a startup or any small business, right? It's you're gonna if you lean into the fear and think I'm not capable of selling myself and selling my business, you may run to a lead generation company or a lead generation strategist when you're not ready for it. And you're basically putting capital in where maybe you should be focused elsewhere. And so, again, I think all of those folks, there's a lot of great folks out there that do it at a great level and have good intentions that can really help you grow your business. But really, you got to figure out who you are first and not really lead your business from fear and just go in there, and because it can be a scary, uncomfortable place. And so it's just not worrying about where the sales are coming from, just knowing that they're going to come if you put yourself out there in an intentional way.
And I've had so many solopreneurs on the show as well. So it's incredible to hear you on that road and seeing success and having the drive and the passion that you do. I do have a two-part question for you here. Would love to hear your take on it. And that's, how is that affecting your ability to focus on more of the founder level work? And are you thinking about, now that you're seeing that success, what you're providing for your market, are you looking that you're going to be hiring some more support in that sales marketing area so you can focus on those founder level tasks that you need to?
I think that's the inflection point. That's what I would tell a startup is if you're beginning to get bogged down with tasks and important tasks, you're getting bogged down with the important tasks, or you're scaling to the point where you're like, hey, maybe I should bring in somebody from a fractional sales point of stuff. a point. And that's a difficult balance. One of the things that I'm sure all your solopreneurs tell you is this could become a 24/7 thing, right? Like the business is never closed. And so you want to have that work-life balance, and you also just want to be able to be creative and focus on the business. So once you start to feel like you're the reason why your business is maybe choking a little bit or it's not thriving the way it is, that's likely like you need to bring in some help, right? So first look at what you're doing and making sure you're prioritizing things correctly. But if you're like, hey, I'm doing everything I need to do, there's just too much to be done, that's when you could think about bringing in a virtual assistant, thinking about reaching out to, and we all get on a daily basis, we have these lead generation companies reach out to us. You know what? Find the good ones that feel right to you and partner with them. So it's knowing when to bring in help. Look, there's definitely anyone that's in this, they'll talk about the grind and stuff. Don't let that I'm grinding be a mask for, man, I'm beginning to get burnt out, right? Because if you're feeling like you're burnt out, and now if you're feeling like you're burnt out and you're not generating revenue, then you really got to take a hard look at what you're doing. But if you're feeling burnt out and you're generating revenue and you're killing it, then it's really not probably, it's really time to start bringing in some help. And you'll know where that help is needed, whether it's lead generation, whether it's just bringing in a virtual assistant. It could really run the gamut. But it's at that point, it's time to start sharing the wealth and building out and start helping some other people out on their journeys.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, I mean, I love the mindset and where you are. And I think that's really going to help so many of our listeners who are in a similar boat that you are. What would you point to right now as your biggest bottleneck, Anthony, whether it is that lead generation side or the fulfillment side, being that you're doing so much on your own? What can you point to on that side as something that you're looking to solve?
Honestly, for me, speaking personally, my biggest challenge is getting all these ideas in the shower and writing them down and then thinking, okay, when could I get to that? Or when should I get to that? Even today, I had real just this beautiful explosion of different ideas and concepts that I want to tease out. And it's just finding the time to work on those. And then how do you parlay those into the business? So it's really like, how do you remain creative while at the same time building your book of business? I think if there's a bottleneck there, I don't want to talk about innovation and revitalizing and growing a business and not do it myself. If there's one thing I don't dig, it's hypocrisy. So if I'm not practicing the things that I'm preaching to my clients, that's problematic for me. So if there's a bottleneck, I think it's in the generating all these ideas, being careful not to overcommit myself to other people who I want to help. I think if there's a potential for bottleneck, I believe it's there.
Gotcha. So, I mean, with that, then paint us a picture, Anthony. What does the rest of this year look like for you with everything that you have in front of you? Clear as day, you have that drive, you know where you want to go. So, what does the rest of 2025 going into 2026 look like? What are you laser focused on with those goals?
I've got some really beautiful budding collaborations with some really amazing people out there that I'm very excited about that we're aligned from a coaching and leadership philosophy standpoint. So it's putting efforts into that. And again, that's the part where it can be a little bit scary because that's going to be like downtime development time, right? So we can bring things in the correct parlay, bring things to market, right? But bring these concepts to fruition. And these are new paradigms around thinking about how we should show up as leaders and again, individual contributors, which is how we started this conversation. So it's building that while still keeping my eye on building my book of business. I think it is the biggest challenge, but and this is going to probably be maybe counter to what a lot of people hear, but I am a big believer in I'm going to receive what I need to receive when I need to receive it, meaning that I don't need to have it all figured out. I'm not entirely certain when everything's going to happen. And it's a luxury I have because I'm not creating projections for a bunch of investors, right? Or Wall Street, right? So my revenue, I try not to get caught up in revenue targets, right? It's like the collection and pool of people I'm working with, we want to do some good. Yeah, we want to make money while doing it, and you can do both. Those aren't contradictory. So what's next for me is focusing on those collaborations and making sure I don't let those partners down. But I'm not going to tell you that I've got this massive strategy going forward because I think sometimes some of those things can get caught up in ego. And sometimes those things can get caught up in what I've been told I need to be successful as opposed to what feels right to me. And so I'm going to go with the what feels right to me. And the fundamental piece of that is making sure you're providing for yourself and your loved ones and you're doing what you need to do. But based on the bottom pyramid of Maslow, right? You've got that. Everything else to me is just gravy where I could focus on those collaborations. So it's not this, I've got this 30, 60, 90-day plan. It's not completely seat of the pants, but at the same time, if you want to really co-create and you're going to bring some people in, if you start boxing yourself in too much, your co-creation is not going to really grow and realize what it can really potentially be. So it's maybe not the answer you wanted. And what I would say to folks, focus in on what you need to focus in on. And the if just a quick plug for Reset It. Reset It is really the premise of Reset It is basically you're caught up in your programs and conditions, right? Which were handed on from parents, teachers, colleagues, you name it. These were all handed into you, right? And so what Reset It's about is working not off of the programs and conditions that were handed to you, but basically working from your intuitive self, right? And what you're receiving at the moment you're receiving it. So again, not wanting to be caught up in hypocrisy, I'm going to look at practicing what I preach. So it's that very long-winded response, right? But I think that when you get into these cliches of this, time anyone asserts that this is what you need and it doesn't quite feel right to you, you got to really check because that's probably a trigger that it's not aligned with what you really want to try to be doing.
And then I just have one more question for you to wrap us up here in the lightning round, Anthony, and that's going to be on the advice side. I definitely am excited to hear this from you. What can you give to our listeners, a piece of advice, other founders, entrepreneurs, business owners that are tuning in, hearing out your journey right now and the successes that you've had? What can you leave them with before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is don't lean into the fear. When you're trying to build out a business, you may be staring at your bank account, right? And you may have set aside some funds to say, "Hey, I can survive off of this while I build my business." And while you're trying to build your business, that fund is slowly diminishing, right? And fear can start filtering in, right? Or maybe you built some sort of campaign that's not quite landing the way you want it to land, and you get that negative self-talk starts kicking in, and you start building up you start again leaning into that fear. So you have to one of my favorite phrases which I got from somebody online is comfort's a cage, do hard things, right? And so part of that is just staying away from staying in that fear. So anytime that fear starts creeping in, just take that as a trigger that your old beliefs and conditions are trying to pull you a place you don't need to be, right? And don't get in your own head. Don't start getting that negative self-talk going. Just stay true to who you are and don't feed the fear.
So we love that. With that right there, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap up another incredibly inspiring episode of Founders Future. Anthony, just want to thank you again coming on the show, sharing your journey and your insights with us. And as I just mentioned, clear as day why you're seeing that success, your drive, your passion, your intelligence is incredible. And it was truly an honor to have you on the show walking us through that. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, which I know so many of you have, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also check out Calleo EX at CaleoEX.com for their free consultation for the Reset It Inc. program, and follow Anthony on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Anthony B. Calleo. And for more resources and insights, you can visit us here at closers.io, where we are dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their growth through trained appointment setters and world-class marketing systems. Until then, keep climbing, and we will see you on the next one.